Hello, film fans. Welcome to the Film vs. Film podcast, My Film versus My Inspiration special episode. My name is Martin Harries, your host. On this episode, I interview new filmmakers and actors about their new and up-and-coming film and the films that inspired them. If you enjoy this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Hello, Podroonies or Podsters, if you prefer. Welcome back to our new series of podcasts again, My Film versus My Inspiration. Today, we are talking about the new short film, Spectrum, and the inspirations for the film, which are the likes of Clerks, No Country for Old Men, Nope, Nil by Mouth, and the Royal Family TV show. And I'm joined by the wonderful Rick Stanton, the writer and director of Spectrum. How are you, sir? How's it going?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me. And I'm looking forward to this one because it's kind of a different area that people don't normally talk about in terms of inspirations, especially for like more short form films. So it's a good way to sort of give those little Easter eggs away of how the film was made and what inspired it for different reasons, really.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, I like to be a little bit different, you know. Stand out from the crowd, at least try to. I absolutely love the film. I don't say that lightly. Yeah, it really kind of stuck with me for a while after watching it. Really loved it. So initially then, what were the kind of this what was the starting point for you? What was your kind of first point where you're like, okay, I need to make this film?
So basically, a couple of years back, I was up for this scheme that Channel 4 does called 4 Stories.
Yeah.
And 4 Stories is basically a scheme they were running for about 3 years in a row, which were an opportunity for new writers to they submit their work, and then 3 pieces of work were chosen, and they were half-an-hour films. And then with those new writers, they get new directors who are also uncredited with TV or film to come on board as an opportunity for those to direct something that will end up on Channel 4. And it's a great scheme because lots of those films have been nominated for BAFTAs. Most of those writers and directors have gone on to like do other work for like Netflix and other shows. Like I know one of them went on to direct some Top Boy episodes and stuff like that. The writer, who's somebody I know, went on to write for a show called Chaos on Netflix. And basically I was up for that, and I got to the final round where I read the script and I was going to be trying to be one of the directors, and I went into Channel 4 and pitched my version of the script, and it went really, really well, and I thought I had the job in the bag. I was really excited about it, and then a couple of weeks later I didn't get the gig. So then I thought, okay, let me sort of prove to them and everybody else that I could do my own half an hour, kind of as a calling card, really, to say, look, I could do an episode if I'm given the opportunity, basically. So then what happened was the last scene in the film is a sort of very violent encounter that the lead character has when he's walking home. He sort of comes across this woman who's being violently attacked, just to give it away, basically. And essentially I wrote that scene first because that actually happened to me in real life around 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
When I came across this woman who had all blood on her face. She had like a busted nose. She was screaming in the street at like 2 a.m. in Stratford in East London. And then basically as I was helping her, the police came along and put me in handcuffs. So basically I wrote that as a scene and thought, okay, how would this situation play out if it was actually my brother who encountered that, who has autism? Would he act differently? How would he respond? And how would that affect him? So basically, that's what I did. I then had the idea to do a story of my brother's journey. And then we end up casting Steve to make it feel really authentic and have that real sort of naturalistic feeling that we was going for.
Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite aspects of the film, is this fantastic kind of naturalism that you bring to this film and that you capture so brilliantly. So, like, moving on to kind of your inspiration. So one of them was Clerks. Like, the dialogue definitely feels kind of more and more sort of realistic as we get to know these characters in Clerks, and kind of the creativity with the dialogue feels really well timed for kind of maximum impact, and the rhythm just feels incredibly satisfying when you watch that film. So Was that something you kind of drew upon when writing these characters for your film in terms of like a rhythmical point of view? Is
It
that
was
fair?
the biggest inspiration, I guess, was so Steve's friends within the film are Steve's friends in real life.
Yeah.
And we
Okay.
knew we was going to use one of Steve's friends called Kyle. And Kyle is like a sort of encyclopedia when it comes to, and Steve actually as well, in terms of Marvel and superheroes in general, and
Yeah.
video games and wrestling and things like that. So what we wanted to do is really lean into their strengths and allow them to talk freely about the subject matters that they do understand. And also it was the theme of the film as well is basically what is it to be a superhero? And the part of that is because people on the spectrum often get sort of the phrase that autism is my superpower. So we wanted to
Yeah.
play with that theme of what is it to actually have a superpower and get away from the typical thing of having a special ability. But we wanted to show a character who becomes a superhero in terms of they just, when it comes to that big important moment at the end, it's not about having been able to fly or have super strength or anything. It's about somebody that makes the right decision and acts upon something that needs to be acted upon.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. So with sort of like when you're writing the dialogue, are you kind of writing it with kind of the actors in mind? Are you working with the actors with that? With
Yeah,
what
so
they would kind of say, naturally?
so the way we actually did the film is I wrote the script in full and it
Yeah.
had full lines of dialogue, everything was there. But then when we actually shot the film, we never took the script to shoot with.
Okay.
Nobody read the script other than myself, basically. So
Okay.
what we'll do is when we're shooting a scene, let's just say, for example, there's a scene when Kyle and Steve just having a chat and they're playing a video game, and then Steve's got a job interview coming up, and Kyle's just asking him what he will wear for the job interview. And with that, I basically, just as I just did, briefed it as that, and then let Kyle ask that in his own words. And then while he's talking, doing that, they're also playing a DC video game at the same time. So basically, when they were talking, I said, okay, now refer to the characters within the game, because I knew Kyle will have a really good point to say. And then what he does there is brings out the great golden lines of dialogue, is because of his knowledge of the video game. So it's sort of like creating an environment where people will be led in a certain way and bring stuff to the table with themselves. And then what we'll do is we'll just roll camera, we'll never cut, we just keep rolling and keep rolling. And then when somebody says something that is a like incredible line, we'll just go, okay, yeah, let's lean into that more, let's lean into that. And then if it's taking it too far away from where we know narratively where it needs to go, then I'll just draw it back and go, okay, look, let's not go down that route, let's bring it back to this. And then I'll just suggest a few lines, and then with that they can do with them as they wish. And then that's how we always found like a very authentic and very, very naturalistic performance, because we was allowing people to just express themselves and bring what they want to the table. And it's always about that. I think whoever you always, when you cast somebody, it's not because they're necessarily even the best actor, it's because they're bringing something that you're looking for a particular role. Like for this film, for example, you wouldn't cast Leonardo DiCaprio because he's not the right guy for the job. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. It would just take you right out of it. But yeah, I definitely agree with that at all. You definitely get that sense of authenticity with what they're saying, kind of thing, and you kind of get that with Clerks as well. One of your inspirations, that they're talking about comic books and Star Wars all the time, and it feels very natural when you're watching that as well.
Yeah, that's what we were going for, really. And we wanted that sort of it's with that sort of dialogue, I feel like it's almost audience participation. It's like you're hanging out with your mates. When you're watching Clerks, you're just hanging out in that convenience store. That's all you're doing with it. And we wanted it to feel like that. Someone who watched it, who was a producer, he produced a film called His House, who was a sort of mentor to me. And I showed him the film as like an early edit before it was actually finalized. And he said, it's a hangout movie. You're just hanging out with these people. That's the main thing. You just sort of feel like you're there as well, which was a great compliment, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And you feel like you just want to crack open some beers, or and then go to a comic shop or just a grocery store afterwards or something. You mentioned that dialogue scene with Steve and his friend. I really liked that scene. That was certainly one of my favorite scenes in the film. And they're kind of talking about why it's important to wear a suit for Steve's interview, like a superhero would, like wear a suit for crime fighting, and it kind of gives them legitimacy. You know, for Steve, it's kind of like an added layer of what he thinks will give him more of a sense of equality, but obviously it doesn't turn out like that, and you know the interviewer basically ignores him throughout. So kind of how important was it for you to get that point across for you, and kind of the reality of Steve's circumstances for you?
It's very important because Steve, obviously being my brother, like me and Steve shared a room until I was like 25. So we just grew up in a council flat in Canning Town in East London, and we shared a room together, like I said. And I just wanted to sort of depict an honest look at what it is to be on the spectrum, really, and show his real like life experience of how he's experienced going through like just trying to get work and being sort of disregarded before he's even gone in the room. And we wanted to sort of depict that as closely as to reality as possible, and sort of show how he's just trying to be as normal as possible. Like him wearing a suit is out of his comfort zone. It's not him at all, but he's sort of made to do that in terms of just trying to fit into society, where that was an important, interesting scene actually when he does the job interview, because Hassan, who plays the guy who's interviewing him for the job, he's disregarded him before he's even walked into the room. And when we was playing that scene out, we kind of struggled with it because we tried to do it in multiple ways where Steve wasn't doing good answers and he was kind of being boring and stuff like that. And then what we found is, no, the best way to do it is Steve should just do an honest, strong interview, because what he's actually saying is a really strong interview, but he's just not being listened to. And that's just because of society typically sort of puts people on the they sort of discard people before they've even had a real opportunity, and we wanted to show that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the first scenes in the film where I felt kind of emotional watching it. Like I felt kind of almost kind of angry for him, and like it's just kind of you definitely got the right reaction out of me for sure. Yeah, I think what you were going for, and just really well constructed as well. The way that scene is crafted in particular, because you get that sense kind of right away. Like all the elements I think work really strongly from the directing and acting. Yeah, tremendous scene that for me.
Yeah, thanks. So another one that people talk about as well, seem to talk about, especially in the autism community, is the corner shop scene. And I think people respond to that because typically in a show or a movie, you wouldn't see somebody just doing something every day like buying a pint of milk. And it just really shows Steve's sort of daily struggles with just general stuff that people wouldn't even think of, you know, just being able to just manage money, which is such an important part of everybody's life. And to sort of show that struggle that he has and how he's just trying to do a simple task, but he finds it really difficult. And just because of he just struggles in that area, I thought that was a really important scene for us to show, because like Steve was at my house today and he sort of daily struggles with little things that you would sort of disregard as a thought process. It's just, we want to really sort of depict that in a very honest way. Yeah,
I really like that scene as well. Weirdly, it kind of brought me back to Shaun of the Dead in a way, kind of just with the money, just kind of leaves it there. Obviously, very different tone, but yeah, I actually really liked the shopkeeper in that. I don't know if he was an actor or the
genuine. No, he actually is the shopkeeper. Yeah, so he's just a guy called Nando, and he's just a local shop guy from in Canning Town. He's just like loads of people know him and stuff. And it was just by chance really that I went to maybe 5 or 6 different shops and said, "Can we film here?" Most people said no. When I asked that guy, he was like, "Yeah, fine." And I said, "Oh, would you want to be in it?" And he's like, "Yeah, great." And he just was happy to be in it. And it's the best way to cast sort of characters like that, because he's doing that job every single day of his life. It's second nature to him. So he's not acting, you know, he's just responding to what Steve gives him, and he's just like any other customer, and he's just trying to treat him like he does to every person that walks through the door.
Yeah, definitely. And I really appreciated kind of that choice as well, because you get this sort of balance of how a lot of the other characters sort of interact with him, it's not all negative. Like the shopkeeper was actually quite nice with him and actually genuinely trying to help him to get the right milk, etc. Because obviously he had limited money. So I definitely appreciated that sort of that balance you had with the fact that not every character is horrible to Steve.
Yeah, I think that's also important because most people in life do have empathy, you know. So it is important to show that as well. I think you can't just have everybody out and out to get somebody, because that's not reality. You know, we wanted to have it so it's most people are good, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Another film that inspired you for this film was the ending of No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
Such a incredible film, this one. But the ending of No Country for Old Men is certainly kind of famous for having a very kind of quiet ending, where the film is just kind of focuses on Tommy Lee Jones's character telling us about two dreams he had about his father, about kind of the inevitability of aging and in a rapidly changing world, and a longing for a simpler time after kind of the chaotic violence that's happened in the film previously. You know, that kind of makes no sense to Jones's character. And Steve sort of has a similar point of view in a way, but your film certainly has a brighter ending where, you know, a witness tells the police that Steve didn't commit the crime and was actually the hero of the film. Can you talk about about why you wanted to end at that point in the story?
Yeah, so the sort of reference to No Country for Old Men is more when the guy gets run over, and then we don't know whether he necessarily gets away from the police or not. And it was just it's that sort of false end, because in our film we have like a false ending where the credits start to come up and then it comes back, and we wanted this sort of audience to feel a bit frustrated, like, oh, what's is that it? That's the end, is it? And we wanted the audience to feel something, pissed off basically is what we wanted them to feel. And I feel like sometimes people feel like of all the Coen brothers films, really, because they sort of end how life does end. It doesn't end. Stories just sort of stop and they move on to another story. With that, they sort of just, it ends as it's not finalized. There's no sort of resolution to it. No, it's just, oh, okay. And we wanted to sort of give that feeling a bit as well, where it's just not so much, because we do sort of clarify at the very end, but we wanted that a moment, a few seconds where people think, oh, is that it? What next? Because it's that feeling of also people wanting more, and they do get that resolution at the end of our film as well, to an extent, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, were you ever tempted to just actually completely end it there?
Yes, but we felt it was too cold for Steve's character. We wanted to still have, basically the whole point is the whole film is bookended with, at the very, very beginning, we see Steve playing a video game, and he's playing a superhero video game, and he's failing at that. He's dying in the game. He's not succeeding at the mission. And then at the very end, he does succeed at the mission in real life, and he becomes the real hero, essentially.
Nice. Yeah, I really love No Country for Old Men, and certainly Anton Chigurh is a character that's incredibly cold and calculated, with very little dialogue, with that character that Javier Bardem plays. And certainly you have the rapist character in your film, and is obviously only in the film for a few minutes, but immediately you get this kind of sense that this guy is a bad dude.
Yes.
You know, how much work went into kind of creating those feelings that this guy is a wrong'un, sort of thing.
Yeah, so the sort of final, the sort of third act of the film really is, it changes very differently in terms of tone. It becomes more, I guess, cinematic, more gritty, more like a typical film, I guess, or a typical drama. And the feeling of the character comes all from Simon's performance, really. So Simon is the actor. I can't remember his surname, badly on me. Basically, when he sent his audition, we probably had, 30 people send tapes. And soon as Simon sort of said hello, I just knew this is the guy. Because he was straight away, he was in character. Like, Simon's a lovely fellow in real life, but he was already in character when he sort of was introducing himself. And I could just see it in his eyes that he knew what was presented on the page for him. So then when we did the pub scene, where you sort of start to introduce Simon as somebody. It's probably, I don't know, an 8-minute scene, or there's a big karaoke sequence, and there's some dialogue scenes. And within that, we keep cutting to Simon. He never speaks, but we just sort of see him overlooking the night and seeing him sort of being threatening without having to do anything. And it's the reason for that is to sort of keep the suspense going of, we don't know where this is going. Like every good movie or story or joke or anything, you should always not know where it's going. It's going to take a left turn at some point, but you don't know quite when. And that was the kind of the thought process with that big sort of the third act really, is because we've been in Steve's world for say 20 minutes, and then the last 10 minutes it just takes you somewhere completely different. And the kind of, it almost feels like two films. But that was important to us because that's what life is. And that's like, if you ever encounter an event like that Steve does at the end, that's how those events sort of happen. You could just be walking home and your house is on fire, or you witness something, or something that is going to be change you forever could happen within a spare of a moment. And I really wanted to sort of show that in terms of, you could wake up in a comedy, but you could go to sleep in a horror film. And I think that excites me when I watch something like that as well, because you don't really know where it's going to go, because there's a lot of drab stuff out there these days. And I think things need to be shook up a bit.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely are brilliant at creating that sort of sense that you don't necessarily know how this film is going to like turn out. It's kind of brilliantly paced as well, because you kind of have this party scene. You focus a little bit more into the female character, and who is the girlfriend of the interviewer, and you're like, okay, why is this kind of related to Steve's story?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's really well paced.
Yeah, and it's kind of getting that, because so the woman who gets attacked at the end, the boyfriend of her is the person who's unkind to Steve when he does the job interview. He conducts the job interview.
Okay.
So we wanted to show that the guy who discarded Steve as anything will never know that he's the one who actually saves his girlfriend from being brutally raped or murdered or whatever is going to happen next. Because there was a moment when we wrote the scene, and we was going to have the boyfriend does come to pick her up like halfway down the street, and then he realizes, oh, that guy Steve who's been arrested, he's the guy I interviewed and I wasn't nice to, and he's the one who's helped out. But then we thought, no, it's better that he never knows. He will never know that the guy he was a prick to saved his girlfriend's life. And that's better for the story, because it just sort of shows that guy will always be ignorant, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely kind of hits hard with that feeling, for sure. Another film inspiration for you that definitely hits hard is Nil by Mouth. I'd not seen this one before, so I wasn't totally sure what I was expecting. And yeah, Ray Winston is a scary dude in Nil by Mouth throughout the film, and there's certainly quite an incredibly violent scene in that film in particular, between him and his wife Kathy Burke, but you don't really see much of the actual violence. I wouldn't say, but it's just kind of the intensity of the acting between Ray Winston and Kathy Burke too that kind of gets to you. It's so intense. So you certainly, you've talked about it a bit already, but you have a particularly violent scene at the end of your film as well. So kind of how important was it for you to kind of get that scene right from an acting point of view and a directing point of view?
Yeah, so
that sort of authenticity.
Yeah, so that scene was that was the second to last scene. The last scene we actually filmed was the pub sequence in the karaoke sequence, but the second to last was the big attack moment when it sort of is 90% of the budget of the film, because we have a real police car and real uniforms and everything, like real location and stuff like that. And that scene, everything in terms of performance is carried on that last scene, because Steve's not an actor who's the lead, and everybody else in that scene is. And when all the rest of the film, we were sort of just making the film, having a nice time making it, you know, like we'll turn up today and we'll see what we get and we'll piece it together and we'll figure it out and it'll be great. But this scene, it was like, oh, okay, this one needs to be more bigger as a performance, and it needs to, especially when Steve's witnesses the scene and then he goes to sort of confront the attacker. And it was something that we was worried about. Well, I was worried about. And then when we were setting up lighting and camera and stuff, Steve was the only actor there on set at the time because everyone else was coming a bit later once we're ready. And then I said to Steve what the scene involved, what he needed to do. And then I just went off and was setting up a light or whatever. And then I could hear screaming, even though we're not filming. I could hear shouting in the street. And I looked outside and Steve was rehearsing on his own. He had found that he holds a piece of wood in the scene. So he had found that himself. And then he was like pretending to do the scene, play it out himself. And I was just...
And you didn't tell him to do that?
No. He just took it on himself because he knew it was important and he knew it was something that asked of him that was different to what we had done previously. So when he was rehearsing on his own, I completely relaxed because I was like, oh, he understands the importance of it and he is here to sort of turn up and give the best he can. And like, it was incredible. Like when he did the scene, straight away when we did just one take, we're like, oh, wow, this is, I couldn't imagine it being this good. And he just did it so well. Like in the shot, like when he's screaming at the guy, like you can see his lip trembling and all sorts, like he's really, really there. So it's it was an incredible moment to witness my brother. Do you know what I mean? To be able to do that is amazing.
Do you slightly like change your approach with kind of directing him as an actor, like with the other actors as well? Do you sort of in that kind of, when he's in that state of mind, when he's really in the moment, do you kind of treat him as one of the other genuine actors?
I don't think we do it any different. The difference between working with non-actors and actors is actors will just be incredibly consistent unless you ask them to change what they're doing. Where when you're working with non-actors, they will typically give something different every single time. So it's more of a thing of getting your edit in place is trickier because you're working with lots of different... It's more like, I suppose it's probably like working with Jim Carrey. He's never going to give you the same thing twice. And that's what it's like working with non-actors because they don't hit their mark. They don't say the lines in the same order or the same tone or anything. They always give something different, which I find exciting because then when you get to the edit process, it means you can find the performance from there. I always remember George Lucas when he made American Graffiti. Ron Howard did a scene and he said to George Lucas, like, oh, do you have any notes? Like, am I doing it right? Should I change anything? And George Lucas said to him, I haven't got time to direct you right now. We'll do it in the edit. And I think that's it kind of seems lazy or just not that you're not a good director, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think what a lot of kind of directors say that I've heard is that 90% of directing is casting, and like your directors are bringing actors in for a specific role, and they have to take on like what's written on the page. They're trusting their actors to bring what they think should be brought to the table for the film.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's exactly what it is. I think the casting process is 90% of it. If you get that right, then you just let people do what they need to do. Because in their audition, every person we cast in it's because of their audition tape. And it's not because other people did a bad audition. It's just because you're looking for something that for that particular role that it just sort of feels right. It's just your gut. It's just purely your gut instinct of when you see somebody come on and they deliver something. Often it's something that you're not expecting. And then you're like, oh, wow, that's the missing piece. Like on the page it says this, but what they're doing is, I believe.
Yeah. So what was it actually like directing your brother then? Was it a fun experience? Was it kind of frustrating at times, or was it just very freeing?
It was all of those things. I'd say the main thing, it was just so much fun. So like the mum in the film as well is our real mum. And the aunt in the film is our real aunt and stuff like that. So it's just like hanging out. And like the house that we shot in, the flat that we shot in is where we grew up. And me and Steve shared a room, like I said earlier. That's our flat, So it was just hanging out for, I think the total of the film took about 8 days. But that's all we were doing, having a nice time, making something together. And it was very freeing in terms of nobody fully invested in the script because it meant there was no expectation. all I knew is as long as they say roughly these lines, and because I had sort of overly thought about the overall arching of what the film is, because I had that in my mind of what it is, it meant oh, as long as we roughly get this, it will work. Like, just trust me, it will work. And we shot very out of sequence as well. So, like, I think the first thing we shot is probably like scene 4, and then the second scene we shot was probably like scene 9 or whatever. So it's very, very out of. So when we were shooting it, even the DOP who's like been my best friend since like, I don't know, 11 years old or whatever, he had read the script, but when we was shooting it and then he did the first draft of the edit, he was like, oh, I just sort of trusted that you knew what you was doing, because he was like, when we were shooting these random scenes, he was like, I had no idea where this is going, you know. I don't know. He was like, I couldn't piece it together, even though we're shooting it, because it just felt like just so discombobulating of what it is. So like, it was really nice for when we first did a screening of the film. We did a screening in the Stratford Picture House with like friends and family, and then so basically that's when everybody watched it for the very first time, and Steve hadn't even seen a single scene cut together. So when he watched it, he finally see all of his hard work as like a finished product, and yeah, I think he was blown away by it. So it all works.
Yeah, that must have been so satisfying for you to watch.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Your brother watch it, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was just a really nice moment, because like when we finished doing the screening, people that Steve had never met before who know me were like asking Steve for photographs and stuff like that, you know. So there was all like taking pictures with him and everything, and he was a movie star for the days, you know. So it's a really incredible thing.
Did he outshine Wumi Masaka?
She wasn't there. He wasn't at the screening, sadly. But yes, I think he would have.
Yeah. What was it like working with her? I mean, she's, you know, on the up and up. Absolutely loves Sinners. What was it like?
Yeah, so I've known Wumi for maybe 20 years or so, but we've never worked together. But so basically, what happened was I just got pure luck getting Wumi in the film, really. So essentially, we was already shooting the film, and basically, when I was trying to cast for the scene that Wumi's in, she plays like a support worker. I was literally like, booking a venue and sorting everybody else out to arranging it around a certain date. And then just by chance, my girlfriend said, oh, Wumi's back in town for a bit, because Wumi lives in LA. And so I just sent Wumi a text and said, look, we've been making this movie. I sent her like maybe 1 or 2 edited scenes, and I sent her the dialogue that she had to do. And I said, like, look, if you've got a spare hour or 2, would you be up for doing it? And then she came back and said, yeah, of course, let's do it. So then we did it all within 1 hour. And yeah, she's incredible. Like, the way we did it as well with Wumi is I just gave her the questions as if she was running a support group. And I said, today you're just a support worker. Here's your questions that you will be asking in the support group. And let's just run it. And if whatever they give you, just respond, and then feel free to ask another question based on their answer. And then we just keep bouncing it around, and then we find the scene. And then what we did as well was, once Wumi had left, we just filled in any gaps that I felt, we could lean into that a bit more. And then we just had a stand-in, sit in Wumi's seat, and we just didn't show her on camera, obviously. And then she just reread the line, and then people were looking towards a stand-in actor to fill in any gaps that we thought, because we only had a limited time with Wumi. But yeah, obviously Wumi's incredible, and yeah, we got very lucky to have her.
Yeah, amazing. That's great to hear. Yeah, she just brings that level of kind of security and comfort when you kind of watch the film in that early section. Yeah, I guess sort of maybe kind of a false sense of security in a way.
Yeah, I think
it kind of up-steps you.
You see a Oscar-nominated actor within the first 45 seconds or whatever it is in a film, you think, oh, okay, this might not be so bad, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, excellent stuff. Going back to kind of Nail by Mouth, that film certainly floored me as well. But the opening scenes I found really interesting in the comedy club. And for a lot of the scenes in the film, it feels like Gary Oldman, the director of it, is keeping things quite loose with the actors, and it feels very natural. Even with the camera work, it feels like Oldman is picking out moments, you know, and building a scene like that. I know you've kind of spoken a lot about that sort of your process already, but certainly from a directing point, I definitely felt that in your film too, especially in that pub party scene,
Yeah.
Like how much of your kind of directing was just finding moments in the edit and in the directing, or was it more kind of planned out? What was your kind of approach?
It was very much as you say. In terms of what we did for the pub scene is we hired the pub or the section of the pub, and then I got basically, I don't know, 30 or 40 extras to come down who are like just friends and family. And then what I did is I just put like 500 quid behind the bar and just said, and then everybody got there probably an hour or two before we started filming, and then they just had a few drinks, got all settled in as if they were on a normal night out. And then we just did the karaoke sequences and let people. The direction for everybody was, this is New Year's Eve. It's just gone past 12. We're all having a great sing song, and we're all having a nice time. And just do what you feel is natural to you. And then what we did is probably maybe 5 or 6 goes of that, and we had 2 cameras. Every single scene we shoot 2 cameras, and then we just shot two cameras, and then it was. Now we're just one camera's always focused on Steve and the performance in terms of the main actors, and then the other person would be getting all of the sort of extras involved, and then we just keep doing that. So sometimes we'll do 2 cameras on just extras, and then we just keep shooting the life out of it until we feel like, okay, we need to move on because we've got enough, basically. Yeah. And then within the edit, it was quite a tricky scene to edit because I probably had, I don't know, 10 angles on the same song. But I used to work in music, so I used to do a lot of filming for like Universal Music and other stuff. So I've done that sort of audience to build a track up quite a lot. So it was kind of playing on those sort of previous experiences, I guess. I never felt like, I think people feel intimidated by party scenes, and I think a lot of time party scenes are done really badly in films and TV. They always just feel a bit staged or sort of stilted. But we wanted to make it feel like a proper knees up, how pubs should feel and do at certain points in life. And we wanted to sort of, and the whole point of that scene is Steve's sort of, after having a few bad experiences, he's having a real good moment. You know, he's singing karaoke with the girl that he likes and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? He sort of finally got that confidence to sort of take it to the next step. So hopefully it worked.
Oh, it definitely did. You definitely get that feeling, and I imagine you had quite a few hours of that scene in particular to sift through in the edit.
Yeah,
a good.
Yeah, it was.
Time
it was important to me as well because I wanted to make sure every extra got their face on camera at least once, because I felt like everybody's there for free. Do you know what I mean? So I thought it was important to sort of show everybody at least once. To try and make that happen was a tricky thing, but yeah, we got there.
Yeah, so another inspiration for you was Nope. And we were talking before we press record that in the early scenes of Nope, there's this kind of attack scene from this chimp. But then there's just this kind of trainer that's standing up on its end. And you were talking about that you were trying to create sort of this feeling. From that film, you get that feeling that you're like, why on earth is this, trainer on its end around this violence? It kind of, you get that confused feeling. Can you talk about more about like how Nope and that kind of sense inspired this film?
Yeah, so this is a strange one, I guess, because basically I think I'd wrote the film and then I was probably prepping it in terms of starting to shoot, and then I'd seen Nope twice within like a 24-hour period. And then the shoe sequence, it was just really bugging me of like, what does this shoe mean? And then I sort of, on my own fault, was it doesn't mean anything. It's to make me think about the film. It's to make me keep questioning the film. And I thought, it'd be good if we had something like that within our own film, because it keeps the audience's attention, even if it doesn't mean anything. But in our film, it does to different people. So another thing was people often refer to any disability as a superpower and turning it into your superpower. And what we wanted to do is sort of make people feel, Steve is going to have some sort of superpower. He's going to have some sort of super ability. And then when it gets to the final horrific attack scene, we're going to see Steve use that special ability somehow in order to defend the victim. But realistically, we wanted also to keep it grounded within the reality of the film, which is very naturalistic. So what it's actually saying is to have a superpower isn't to have some being able to fly or super strength or anything like that. What it is when somebody is faced with a terrifying circumstance, that they act upon it in a way to become heroic. People aren't born heroes; they become them, and that's because of it's a fight moment for Steve, and he makes the right choice.
Yeah, definitely. Because I definitely had the feelings of sort of scenes from like Carrie or something, you know, because there's some interesting scenes where you think he might have superpowers with like there's a napkin and a coffee cup that he kind of moves a little, and you're not sure necessarily whether that's just in his mind or is this reality right now. So that was kind of really interesting. And then you obviously, as you say, you don't make that decision to kind of follow through with that superhero narrative that so many people these days kind of crave. They want that, you know, that catharsis that, okay, he's got superpowers, let's see what this person is capable of. But then you're like, no, we're going to end it with the brutal reality of the situation, that he's actually just being a genuine superhero as a human being, you know, a normal human being, which I found was just, I kind of just love that touch, the fact that you're playing with kind of audience expectations in a way. Yeah, I really like that idea.
Yeah, like a big thing for me is just trying to take audience on the journey of going up and down with the character, and also not really knowing where the story is going to lead them, just keeping people guessing or expecting something, and it either does take them there or it doesn't. It's always sort of like, for example, there's another little a note of, you see the mum at one point reading like an NHS letter as if she's got some sort of sickness or we don't know. And on those moments, people think, oh, the story's going to go down this route, that he's going to have to care for his mum. But that's not another thing either. It's just showing that all people's lives have depth, and people have things going on in the background that aren't necessarily always the A story. People have A, B, C, D stories every single day. And we kind of wanted to show that's just another element of that one person's life.
Yeah, it's just a little detail you add to just create character, isn't it? To just make this world feel real.
Yeah, 100%.
So you kind of have this interesting decision to make the film in black and white and in kind of sort of a 4:3 ratio with the frame. Definitely brings that kind of stark reality to the film as well, like in Nail by Mouth.
Yeah.
Not technically, but you kind of get that same sort of feeling, as well as being kind of brilliantly framed and directed. Can you talk more about that sort of decision, or was that just sort of a budgetary decision that you had to play with? Or
No. So basically what happened was, before we shot the film, I did a little screen test with Steve where I just run one of the scenes with just him and a camera, just to sort of feel if he can do the performance. Is this going to be worth our time, or is it going to be just too difficult? Because some people just, when you put them on camera, they just clam up and it's just too difficult. So I did a little screen test and I cut a little scene together. And with that, I was playing around with it really. And I tried a few different like grade options, like more traditional different options. And then I put it in black and white, and I added a 4:3 ratio to it. And then I added loads of grain to it to make it feel almost film like a worn out film, or VHS almost, you know, like just like a videotape or something, because it just gave it more of like a home video feel to it. And I didn't want it to feel I didn't want it to look like another Netflix overly polished, clean.
Oh no, yeah.
Like I just felt like stylistically this needs to feel more sort of rugged, and that's sort of the reference point of the Royal Family when I said to you about it's a Royal Family reference. And that's twofold really, because the Royal Family is the naturalistic dialogue between family as well. And also I remember the first couple of series of Royal Family were shot on video, I believe, and then they did like a few years off, and then it came back and it was all in HD, and it kind of ruined the texture of it. It felt less naturalistic, even though the dialogue and it's all written the same and performed the same. It just didn't feel the same. And that was part of that. We wanted it to feel just like, you know, these people more, or you're just watching somebody's life unfold a bit more, you know, almost as if, is this a documentary? Is this a drama? What is this? Is this a sci-fi? Is this a comedy? What is it? It's multi-genre really. And we wanted to sort of lean into that. And then another reason for the 4-3 as well, it kind of just works for the character, because with Steve as a character, he's never been provided any opportunities. He's always sort of been boxed in, pigeonholed, if you like. And then that's why we opened it up. When he's approaching the attack at the end, it turns back into to widescreen format. And that's because Steve's opportunity here to prove himself is opened up here. And his world is going to open up after this experience. So after this, he would be a changed man for the better. And because a lot of people think, oh, that's going to affect Steve in a negative way. It's going to really affect him in terms of having fear to go out in the world. Because this happened to me in real life, it actually is the opposite. What happened to me, the next day, I just felt really good about myself, because when I was put into that situation, I didn't run away. I did help. Yeah, it just gave a positive look on me going forward, and that's what I feel about Steve as a character, and that's why we opened his world up at the end. So in reality, Steve is in a better place than he was just because of that moment.
Excellent. Yeah, I didn't even really notice the ratio change at the end. I don't know whether that's a bad thing from your perspective. I don't know. I was just so in the film kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that's great.
I didn't really notice.
Yeah. But if you watch it again, there's a moment when the lady is walking across the bridge and then it stretches out perfectly. It's so smooth a transition, it works incredibly well. So that's why it's over the bridge moment. But it looks incredible in the cinema. If you watch it in the cinema, it's an incredible moment, because you've been locked in for sort of 25 minutes or so in this sort of box, and then it opens up to this horrific moment, and your eyes even are opened more, because when you watch, you want to look away. You're forced to look more because you've got more screen to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Going back to kind of the grain point that you were making, I totally agree with that, because a lot of films these days, not just Netflix, things just feel too clean and overly polished, as you say, and like you don't have that sense of reality enough, even with films and TV shows that are set, within our own worlds. There just feels like something that's sort of overly added, or if not removed. And I remember just kind of growing up watching VHS tapes, and for me it was kind of like horror films from the 80s. Like when I first watched Halloween for the first time, it was on a VHS tape, and it scared the shit out of me. Yeah, because of that grain of reality. It kind of makes it scarier in a way.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I love that kind of touch you have as well with that. Definitely,
yeah,
works.
It was
more films need to do that.
It was a tricky one to choose, though, because what happens is, as soon as you're presenting a film in black and white, for example, most people want to turn off straight away. But it was the way I saw it was, if I do get to make another film, chances are it will be connected to somebody else. So this is when I do have 100% of control, so I can actually make that choice because it's the right one to make.
I found your sound design really interesting, and it felt very pronounced, with kind of the technology kind of feeling very overwhelming for Steve in those particular scenes, even before that kind of fantastic scene where all kind of the sound elements kind of mix together loudly after Steve finds out he didn't get the job, and you hear kind of his mother's fingers cracking, or that's what it sounded like to me.
Right.
And like the TV and the girl's tablet feeling very kind of overwhelming. Mm-hmm. Plus, I kind of love those shots kind of focusing on the cracks on the walls with Steve out of focus. How important was it for you to kind of get those scenes right in terms of
that was a hard
design?
one. That scene was a hard one because it had a lot of elements to it. And it's a lot, basically, the crack in the wall is a real story, that my mum's council flat had a massive crack and the council wouldn't do anything about it. She's just telling a real story there, because they said unless you can fit a pound coin in it, it doesn't matter, sort of thing, it'd be fine. But the crack's getting bigger and bigger. And it was kind of just a symbolizer of Steve's world falling apart around him, is that even his house is falling apart. And also, like, the TV choice is watching on the TV in the background is a show called Tipping Point, and it's because this is Steve's tipping point. The girl who's playing the game is fixing the car, so that's also broken. So every single element of it is by design, if you like. But the reason it works, I think, is because of all those aspects all grinded together. And like you say, the main part of that scene is the sound design, and it took a while to sort of build upon that scene, because it's almost like, how far do you push it? You know, like if you try and do too little, it's not enough. If you try too much, maybe you need more. You know, it's always get more and more and more. And it took a while to do it, but it was part of that though was the design of it in terms of having those sort of 4 elements of breakages, if you like, to sort of really sort of, it's the thing of show don't tell. You know, it's all there.
Yeah.
It's all there if you actually think about every single shot in it. It's all by design and a thought process that's keeps you up at night. But when you get one of those ideas of like, it should be tipping point, it should be she's fixing a car or whatever. Or when you get that in your mind of like, every single moment should be real well thought out, I think, because why not? Until you've actually shot it, you've got an opportunity to be like, oh yeah, let's make that better by just adding that little bit of sauce to it, you know, just add it to spice it up a bit, you know. Yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed that scene, because that was quite a thought process to get that right, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Really well judged and balanced as well. And then I feel like you even go a step further with that during the arrest scene.
Another thing to just mention on sound design actually is, I don't know if you remember, but the opening title sequence is the sound effect there, and it's used when with the feeling of we're in Steve's mind, is actually from the ZX Spectrum, because the film's called Spectrum, and there's a 1984 video game console, and that's the sound effect when a game is loading. And the reason I've always wanted to use that, because I thought it feels like the mind is loading. It's a game loading, or it's your mind thinking, and it's a kind of uncomfortable sound as well. So when I first said, the film was called Spectrum, I was like, we can use the sound effect to our advantage, and it's like a nice Easter egg for people that connect with that old console. And also when the title screen loads up, that's also exactly how the video game loads in terms of how it appears. So, and I was quite proud of that, because what I did is I got a Spectrum emulator for my PC, and then I downloaded a game, and then within the game I opened the files up, removed the image of what the image should be loading, and I replaced it with Steve's face, and then it loads him like the game literally does. So that's for like all the video game geeks out there that will that one.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's a great touch. But yeah, like with the sound design and sort of the effects, I feel like you go like a step further during kind of the arrest scene near the end, with that kind of overwhelming feeling for Steve, with kind of those blurring effects and sort of this kind of reverb effects with the sound design too. Like, can you talk a little bit more about how important it was to kind of, and how much of a challenge it was maybe to kind of step it up in that, with that kind of overwhelming feeling for?
So with that, basically within that last attack scene, all of the sound effects, any of the sound effects that have been used previously within the film, are used within that moment there. I think it's even got some like voiceovers from the job interview and stuff sort of layered in there, and you wouldn't even notice it, but it's all around those moments. And there's like a motif throughout the film as well, or just like a little piano piece, and that actually was inspired by The Social Network, Trent Reznor's score for The Social Network, and that's what I had as a placeholder, the little piano piece from The Social Network, and then we sort of did our own version, similar enough that it still worked. And throughout the film, basically the notes of the little motif are change every time, but they get higher in pitch every time. So as the film goes, it's getting more and more high pitched, because then it's more of a frequency that is uncomfortable. So then when we get to that final moment, it's like the big crescendo of all of those sort of efforts placed within this small sort of area, if you like, just to sort of really sort of give an overarching moment for all of the sound that's been there already. But yeah, it took a while to get that right as well. The guy, Ollie Beard, that I did the sound design with, we sat together for maybe 4 or 5 days doing that, just basically probably, well, the whole film, but that scene in particular was a lot of back and forth, and it's kind of, it drives you mad after a while.
I bet.
How often can you hear the same sort of sequence in your ears, and you're like, there's something missing. Then when you get to it, you kind of forget about all of the work that you've done, because it's like, all right, we are here. We have landed where we need to be, and we'll just keep it that. And again, when you like to hear that in the cinema, when we went to the cinema, it's just really makes it worth the work, you know.
Yeah, I guess if that particular scene is driving you mad, I think you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. It's doing its job.
Yeah. All right, Rick, I think we'll leave it there. Absolutely love this chat. Absolutely adored the film. It's a really special piece of work. I think that it's very unique. I think, yeah, really, really great stuff. Is there anything else that you're working on that you can kind of talk about briefly now? Or what's coming up with you?
The main thing we want to do really is to extend the film into a feature. So the idea would be to use what we've already got in terms of the half an hour, but then shoot maybe 20 minutes or half an hour with two other characters. There's one character, Jade, who's got MS, and we think it would be really great to explore her journey with MS and sort of show her life and her struggles, but also her overall incredible optimism for life. I've spoke to Jade about it, and she's very excited about hopefully doing it. And it's kind of, people would expect it to be a sort of depressing story, to be heavily disabled like that. But Jade is such an incredible person that she won't allow it. And that's what side of her we would like to show for her. And like, actually, she got married yesterday, which is amazing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, congratulations to Jade. And then the other person we probably was going to look at, well, actually, it was going to be Kyle as well, who's got Asperger's, who's Steve's friend one of Steve's friends in the film. And that was going to be an interesting story of a sort of Carl having a fork in the road moment where he actually got run over when he was like 18, and then he was in a coma. So his story would sort of reflect on that, and how maybe he would have been a different person if he hadn't been involved in a hit and run. And then also another character, Bob, that we was going to explore, and we was going to sort of show how sometimes people with disabilities can be taken advantage of in certain ways. And we're going to link those stories all together around what we've already got. And we just need some money to basically, essentially just so that I can take some time off just having my normal day job, so that I can actually fund doing it. Because the hardest part about making a film is time, especially when you just got like your normal life that you need to sort of pay your rent for, you know? So yeah, hopefully we'll get to do it.
Yeah, good luck to you, man. I really hope you get the money for it and to make this film, because I think you definitely deserve it. Yeah, this chat has been great. It's time to say goodbye, I guess, guys. Thank you, Rick. It's been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for having me.
And it's goodbye from me. See you on the next one, guys. Bye-bye. That's it for the interview. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. But don't stop there. Get involved and tell us if the film will be on your watch list. Send us a DM or comment on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and TikTok at Film vs. Film Podcast. Plus, we are now on YouTube, so hit the like button and comment there. Remember, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. Pod signing off.